Hey everyone, I'm Tim.
And I'm the only Luddite in the Ocean world, Chris.
And welcome to the OSINT Output.
So, what number are we on now?
It's episode 6.
More than that overall. What? Episode 6.
Yeah, we don't count the bonuses in our lineage.
Mm,
They have their own numbering system.
yeah. And this episode's going to be focused on Chris's love for finding lies, apparently.
I mean, I am a liar, so it helps me to know what they look like.
In the name of, in the words of House, everybody lies. So,
Like, I already don't trust the computer. Like, so, I don't trust the internet at all. I think it's just filled with garbage. I mean, there's some good stuff on there and some useful things and some entertaining things, but I just don't trust it. I don't trust machines, and I don't trust the product of the machines, and I definitely don't trust machines that communicate with each other.
well, they are designed to make our lives easier. But with every single new piece of technology, there always comes like drawbacks every single time.
Yeah.
Whenever something gets created, because people will use it for unintentional things, right? What they're not meant to be used for. Incidental things, like they find out it can be used for something else, like vibrating toothbrushes. So, yeah,
To clean your teeth.
exactly.
Or you mean like to scrub the grout out of the shower tile?
Yeah, anything that needs to be vibrated on, I guess, could really use a vibrating toothbrush.
I mean, it helps get the grout out of the tile.
But, and for this specific episode, right, finding lies, and sometimes it's not intentional at all, right? Sometimes somebody just hears something in passing, and then it kind of we can't remember things correctly, so then we go and talk to someone else about it, and then ultimately it becomes a distorted version of the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to remember all of the numbers in a fact-based thing. So it's easy to misquote or misrepresent the intent of something without doing it on purpose.
And it's going into this that we're going to have a series of episodes potentially, depending on how much we go through in this one. That's focused on, again, Chris's favorite topic. One of the ones I know he always talks about. He always goes super deep into these worlds. Is misinformation, disinformation, right? The world of fake news in some circles, and then
I love it. I love it, man.
And then, to a certain extent, malinformation.
So sometimes I get so far into like disinformation or fake news that like I'll spend hours researching the points of something that I already know is garbage, just so I have the freshest knowledge on why it's garbage, and I don't need to. Like,
I can't remember what it was, but Chris does look at a lot of online communities and very popular social media. And I recommended him look at some boards on some popular chants that I know about. And he says, I can't do that. I'm already so deep in these other circles that if I were to do that, my version of the truth or the world will be distorted.
my Weltanschauung.
Your what?
My Weltanschauung.
Now you're using words nobody knows.
Yeah, that's your world outlook or your worldview.
No. Is that Latin?
German, man.
German. After Schadenfreude, you had to learn every other German word.
Starts with a W. That's all I know. I couldn't spell it for you.
All right. So before we get into understanding, or well, actually, our news segment for this episode, let's define these words so our listeners know what's coming up. Right. So we have misinformation, and that's something where. Like we were talking about before, where they hear something and it gets distorted later on.
That's something we all do, I think, on a regular, probably a daily basis, if not, 3 or 4 times a week.
And it can be where you exaggerate an event because your emotions were just so high at that point.
Hyperbole.
Yeah. And then later on, it could be, it's been so long since you heard or experienced the event that it's just.
I mean, that's one that I do frequently, like, because I'll remember a good portion of something I read in like the 6th grade, which was a little bit of time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll misrepresent the point or the overall topic or the findings based on something I read 30 years ago.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and that's not on purpose. And then occasionally, as an adult, I'll be like, maybe that was wrong, and let me look it up. But for the most part, I go, no, my memory is good enough. I'll just rock with it. And so I've actively spread certain misinformation
There's probably not a human being alive who hasn't, right? So unintentionally false information.
or misleading or misrepresented.
Yeah, but the purpose of it isn't to try to provoke a reaction for somebody or try to change events as they exist right now or try to affect an outcome because that's where disinformation
Yeah,
comes
I
in.
mean, there's also no intent to mislead another person.
Mm,
Or like if you tell me something really cool about Pokemon or whatever that is wrong, and then I go tell someone else, like I'm spreading misinfo, but I'm not intending to mislead someone about Pokemon.
yeah, and that's actually a type of bias where you hear it from an authoritative source and you're like, well, that person is usually correct about most things. They have a history of reliability, and so you go and unintentionally spread
Yeah,
false
yeah.
information.
So I just accept your word on Mario or Princess Zelda.
Mhm. Just so y'all are tracking, I know more than just video games. Hopefully, this podcast is making it apparent. So let's talk about the intent to spread false information. Like why would someone want to do disinformation, right? Why would someone want to do that?
Well, I want to motivate you to do something, or I just want to make you angry. Uh, because I mean, if you can cause someone an emotional response, you can cause them to do something. Or I just want you to be misinformed. Like I
Mhm.
just want to deliver fake information. Sometimes I could do it for fun, right? Like,
Also known as trolls on the
yeah,
internet.
yeah, yeah. Or I mean, satire is one of those things where it's just a made up story and it's meant as entertainment. Uh, but it is disinfo. It's intentionally incorrect stuff.
Yeah, and whenever satire is readily identified, I think you can make an educated decision about what topic it's trying to, poke fun of
Yeah,
or talk
yeah.
about. But when it comes across in a more authoritative medium, for example, a nation state creates a piece of information out of thin air, right, about a current ongoing popular topic, and then they post it on one social media service or through a messaging platform, and then that gets spread through diaspora. It gets spread through other services as well, and gets cross posted. So this information can really damage
Some
a population.
There's some good propaganda opportunities in disinformation.
Propaganda, yeah, one of my favorite things to analyze, and also one of my favorite things to work on as well. In a past life, it was fun. So well, that's misinformation, disinformation. So what we got on hook for our news story, man?
Oh, so there was an article out there by Euronews where they talked about they quoted some studies. It's the European Youth Survey where they talk about how kids and I'm gonna say kids lightly just because the headline says youth, but it's really like ages 16 to 30. Um, about how they're relying more on social media like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram for their information more than traditional news sources.
And that's just the fact of the generation right now. Because those streaming sources that they would have access to in the past, right? Conventional, traditional news, like your news at 6 o'clock, in the morning when you wake up, it's not as readily available on
Uh,
mobile
or
devices,
or the nightly evening news where they used to ask you, hey, it's 10 p.m. Where's your kids?
right? Make sure you leave the porch light on, guys. Make
Uh,
sure they're home.
different times, different times. Now you know where your kids are
Probably the only time you would
instantly.
ever go check the bed to see if they're actually there. Like, hey, I know they got out of school at 3. I wonder if they came home today.
I'm glad the news reminded me that my kid is missing.
All right. So when it comes to these, right, what we talked about TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, these algorithms and platforms can be really, really powerful.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so we're actually in a weird crux of society to where I'll say social media algorithms are so good at learning what you want to see that they're already pre-biasing every I won't say everything because I don't like ultimatums, but they're pre-biasing most of the things that come across your feed. So the algorithm, in some capacity, is controlling the content that you view. And like once you start down that misinfo path, um, that algorithm can easily just regenerate similar type topics or similar type misinfo, and just constantly feed you the same incorrect information, whether intentional or not.
And I think that's a thing too, right? I don't think any of these social media platforms, probably when they were created, their initial intent wasn't to be an entire medium for facts and just news, right? But ultimately, youngsters, right? I think the report is what, 16 through
30.
30, 16
Yeah.
through 30.
Yeah.
I don't
It
think
says youth, but I mean, once you start getting into like upper 20s, like, yeah, you're young, but
you're, yeah. And then also I think, 16 through 30, that 16 age limit is quite unique because here in the United States, kids as young as 13 are allowed to have social media accounts, and even younger if they lie about their age, right? And I think in the EU, you can't have certain accounts until you're 16 years old. They're starting to pass those.
yeah, that's starting to crop up in a few places. Other places like China, they're starting to control how much social media content you can see based on your age.
That's true of gaming as well. Now, if you want to online game in China, you have to link your personal identifiers directly to it so they can track how long you game every single day and then stop it at a certain amount.
Yeah, we've all been to those websites where you click yes, I'm 18.
Hmm. Yeah, just get out of my way. Now we look at them and we're like, oh, this is another cookie notice. But no, it's like terms of service that you're agreeing to now. Every nation state has its own propaganda apparatus that it wants to spread.
The U.S. well, we used to be really good at spreading propaganda mixed with truth, or both truth and propaganda. When Voice of America was active, it was really good at spreading information, and accurate information for many countries that it was present in. But there also were some propaganda elements to it, as in we're providing you truth, um, but your government is not. So you can trust us as the Americans.
Yeah, Voice of America actually had a ClearNet website. You just go to like, what was it? VOA.
VOA, yeah.
Yeah. They also had a Onion website as well.
Oh,
So if for any reason Voice of America was blocked where you're at, you just open up a Tor browser if you have it, because some countries you still can't get it regularly. And then you can go straight to that website and view the information as well. It's blocked.
yeah.
One of the things that we need to hit on is malinformation, because I always hear that thrown around with misinformation and disinformation as well.
So malinformation is where you're taking facts and you're deliberately misrepresenting them to, do something similar to what disinfo is doing. So you're trying to elicit a reaction, uh, or motivate your audience into action by using facts and distorting them.
And when you think about malinformation, that usually is intent to harm, and it's disinformation. The definition of it is intent to deceive.
Yes.
Right. So there's already a, like, I guess, I don't know. We'll get into Chris's analytic mnemonic here in a second on this podcast, but when it comes to malinformation, there's already an affected outcome that they want when they spread this.
there is an intent to cause an action or cause a reaction or cause an action with malinformation.
Okay. And this youth report, did this come from that? We were talking about something earlier about the EU youth report. Did that come from that report, or?
So the article is loosely based on the European Youth Survey, and I'll say loosely because so the main headline is that social media is like leading the way in news for kids in Europe, or the youth of Europe, which we established is ages 16 to 30. So that was the purpose for the article, and then they grab in some other surveys, or at least one other survey, to kind of round it out. And it's the article overall is meant as cautionary. like, hey, we gotta do something to make sure our kids are better informed or our youth is better informed. Because if they're only using TikTok, Instagram, and stuff like that, they may not be getting accurate information. Not that those platforms don't have accurate information or accurate news, but they may not be getting it because those platforms are also rife with disinfo and malinfo.
Mhm. Yeah, so never get your news, never get your information from one exclusive source. Try to branch out and look for other ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to, and that's kind of the point of this episode, and then some of the follow-on episodes we'll do where we talk about source validation. Um, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about that here, but we'll have follow-on episodes where we talk about propaganda. It's always cast a wider net than you think you need to receive your information because that's going to give you different perspectives and just different views. And it may also present the same information in a different way.
And as a parent of two kids, much the same as Chris is, it's always important to monitor your kids' usage and understand their outlooks and beliefs on life as well, because third parties, the environment drastically affects them as they get older. So having a relationship with them, making sure they're understanding the content that they're ingesting every single day and viewing and then developing their own ideas from it. It's important that they don't just take it all in and take it at, as the word that they need to
There's
spread.
there's no substitute for engaged parenting.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh,
That's one thing I did with my daughter really, really heavily because, I do believe my son wants to be a Luddite. He definitely has some of those, same quirks and mannerisms that Chris has when it comes to technology. But my daughter absolutely loves her phone. She loves being engaged on there. So that's one thing I do monitor is like, hey, you want to download this app? Tell me where it's from. Talk to me about who made it, right? The country it's based in.
what data they collect.
Exactly. So now she knows to go through all that. And as an effect of that, my also engage my son and try to educate him as well.
Yeah. Critical thinking is something that you have to teach and you have to practice, or else it's out the window. And as OSINT practitioners or as wannabe OSINT practitioners, critical thinking I think is the one of the cruxes of what you need to be effective. You need to know how to validate your sources, and you need to be able to think critically, and you need those two to work in tandem.
All right. So yeah, the youth of our world and the content that they're ingesting and where they're getting it from really super important because they're going to be the leaders of our world in the future.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm also worried about my elders as well because I mean they're subject to Nigerian prince scams the same as anybody else. Right.
I can have a whole episode based on that, especially pig butchering scams that we talked about before. A really huge topic right now in the crypto realm. But anyways, news for this episode. Definitely, if you have kids out there, see what apps they're using, see what apps you've allowed them to use, and see what content they're ingesting every single day because they actually will give you a roll up. When I say they, the company that makes the apps or the app themselves will give you a roll up of what your kids are ingesting daily and what the algorithm is doing to present information to them.
Yeah. Know what the algorithm has made them dependent on as their source of information.
Because they're designed to be addictive. They want engagement.
Yeah. Phones in general are designed for that.
All right. So now that we talked a little bit about that, one of the pieces of content I want to get into is number one is human beings. We want to be social. We want to be with other people, and we want them to ultimately trust us and hopefully become a valued part of our lives. But why would we intentionally spread misinformation or disinformation? Right? What or not
Well,
intentionally, just in general, why do human beings why are we apparently adept at doing that?
I mean, so for the misinfo, uh, it could just be something I genuinely believe, and I want to get you on board with my belief system. So I need you to follow what I'm saying, and that helps us connect. Because if we believe the same thing, then we have a deeper common ground and understanding of each other.
Yeah. So aligning yourself with someone else because you don't want to be alone every single day. That's one of the reasons why I do enjoy working from home, because it gives me the flexibility to do things in my life that I would like to do on my own terms, because I have a very flexible work schedule right now. But being a part of having a friend, essentially,
Yeah, yeah. I could also I could spread disinfo to benefit myself. Like I could lie to you, right? Fabricate some sort of story, which in some way benefits me. So if I can get you to do something because of that lie, like give me your car or something, like that's a personal gain for me.
yeah, or alter the facts so heavily that they aren't what that specific event or story was about at all. And I mean, we see it a lot in politics where somebody has a quote from someone, from a constituent or from a news outlet, and it wasn't backed up by any verifiable source. It wasn't authoritative at all. And then it can ultimately affect the way that people view their politicians, and then also affect their vote as well.
Yeah, yeah. I could also dirty the water so much with information that, and if I'm trustworthy at some point, like if some of the stuff I give you checks out, I could become your sole authority for information on some sort of topic, whether or not I'm actually an authority on it.
hmm I like to think about very popular podcasts do that, where they become a one of the loudest voices, like in the crowd, that it kind of goes through all the noise around there, and it's the only voice that actually gets through.
So noise is a great term for the internet. Like if you're looking up a topic or whatever, there's a lot of irrelevant information. So noise is a part of that. And so how do you sift through the noise?
And that goes back to what you're talking about earlier, when you're engaging with your kids or others, right? Critical thinking is something that, regardless of what our listeners may believe, it's something that can be taught.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so don't just think that I don't have the time for this, or, in some cases, like I wasn't, raised to behave like this. That is something that over time you can learn to do. So when you're presented with information, um, I don't believe that you should doubt every single piece of information that gets coming your way, but I think verification is a huge thing.
Yeah. I mean, and do that with what we say on this show, because I promise you, when we go through our editing process, which Tim is fantastic at, we do that. We double check the things that we have said to make sure our numbers are right or the year is close enough to being accurate.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, numbers, years, and then also sometimes words that are used. That's
yeah.
something that we went through a lot. So a fantastic little mnemonic that Chris introduced me to is, I want to let him say it because he
It's,
just loves saying
it's
it.
crap BS.
So crap BS. And one of the acronyms that I know about that we'll talk about later, especially when it comes to intentionally spreading disinformation, malinformation, propaganda, is SCAME. But crap BS is something I'd never heard of. So Chris, why don't you walk us through some of that?
All right, let's start with C. So that's currency. How current is the information? Is it new? Is it old? Has it been built on that? Depending on whatever you're looking for, you need to know that the information is as current as it needs to be to answer whatever question you're looking for.
And I think currency can go in the next one, right? Because R is going to be relevancy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Currency can go with relevancy. If the most relevant report you can find is 5 years ago, what does that mean about the currency of the report? That's the most current one. But should you try to look for more updated information if you can find it?
You should always try to corroborate your information with multiple sources. So some authorities or institutions put out information only every so often on whatever topic it is, but that doesn't mean that that's the only information out there. So you need to look at, that core information from whatever the, let's say it's, economics. You want to look at, some of the Fed reserves that they're putting out. And then you want to see what other information is coming out. Because, I mean, they have to do regular reports, but there's time in between reports that you need to look for.
And then also when it comes to corroborating it from one source to another, right? From one report to another from them, they're ultimately taking this information from subordinate elements as well, right?
Yeah.
So what are their sources? Where are they getting it from?
Yeah, that's definitely something you want to look at from the relevancy.
Yeah, and then we got C and then R. So we got A coming up. We got two of those.
Yeah, two A's. The first one is authority. Does the source that you're looking at have the requisite background to talk to you about what you're trying to figure out? So if I want to know about video games, I'll talk to Tim. He is one of my representatives of authority in that. What I won't do is I won't go talk to my kids about video games because yes, they play them, but they don't know, they don't have the wealth of knowledge that Tim has about video games. So
Yeah, so my history of reporting has been reliable,
yes,
and that typically
yes,
I look at sources that myself are authoritative as well.
yes, yeah.
So go directly to the horse's mouth. For example, new Nintendo Direct came out this week talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, which I'm thoroughly excited for, but not the price of their video games. And they're raising it to $80 US.
That's too much, man.
And that's for the digital version of the game.
That
For the physical version, which Chris wants to get every single time,
I prefer. Yeah, yeah.
it's going to be $90, I believe.
I won't be purchasing that platform.
All right, and that goes to our accuracy because I'm not totally sure about the prices there, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I read the news report like 3 or 4 times. So accuracy of information, what's going on there?
So you want to know that the information is real. So
Well, I mean, like if you have a person who's an authority on the topic, can't you assume that their information's accurate?
there is a basic assumption that their information is accurate. However, they could have misinformation. They could have remembered something incorrectly and put it out there. So what you want to do is you want to look at other authoritative sources and see if they're in the same vein. So they don't have to 100% reflect each other because no one's going to think about the same topic the same way. But if they're similar in whatever their outcome or their analysis is, that gives credence to the original source that you looked at.
And also, there doesn't have to be necessarily a history of reporting to make someone an authoritative individual in the subject. It could also be their access to the information. Right?
Access is a big thing.
Yeah. So think about the war in Ukraine, right? Who would you rather get the real on the ground truth from? Is it the soldiers fighting on the front lines, right, for that one specific town? Is it going to be President Zelensky, or is it going to be a think tank in Germany, or is it going to be a suburban housewife in Virginia?
I want to get it from the old lady who told that Russian soldier to put some flower seeds in his pocket.
Oh my gosh.
So when he dies, the flowers, at least something pretty comes from it.
Yeah, the initial videos that I was watching for the invasion of Ukraine were just fantastic, and the outpouring of support from all those towns in Ukraine, right? Because I think aren't sunflower seeds a major export of Ukraine?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Yeah, I don't know if it was sunflower seeds, but it's a major export, and they were including those in care packages for Russian soldiers. And I say care packages, we're talking about Molotov cocktails.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So again, accuracy is very important. I always love looking at when I look at a source, right, and the accuracy of the information. I love for them to be no more than 2 to 3 levels removed from the information they obtained.
Yeah. Because if you look at networks and how information spreads, if you get anywhere more than 3 steps, you said levels. If you get more than 3 away, you can no longer verify the accuracy of that information. You just can't.
Mm-hmm. And according to the degrees of separation, everybody's connected to within 6 degrees of each other on planet Earth.
So that's based on a flawed Stanley Milgram study.
Oh yeah.
What he did is he sent out a bunch of letters to people, and he's like, "Hey, send this to," or like he gave them a return address. Well, okay. So he sent out these letters, and he went, "Hey, if you know George, and send it directly to them. But if you don't, send that letter to someone you know who you think might know that person." And so what they found is for the people that actually filled it out and returned it, and then the ones that made it back, it was about 5 to 6 different addresses along the way because everyone had this check-in sheet where they had to fill out their address and then who they were sending it to, And then that person, would do the same thing. Hey, if I know the person or if I know someone that works here, I'm going to send it there. But if I don't, send it to someone I know, but not the person that sent it to me. So I forget the percentage of things that were returned, but for the ones that did make it back, they found that it had 5 to 6 addresses.
And Milgram he was a lot of his studies were performed, the popular ones in like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
I believe wasn't one of his more popular experiments where somebody said, "Hey, don't hurt me," right? The Milgram thought experiment.
Yeah. There's a couple. So he had some studies that did some really cool things as far as understanding humans, our relationships, and their psyches. But every one of his studies didn't have the appropriate controls. Well, I won't say everyone because I don't like ultimatums. Several of his studies didn't have the appropriate controls or backdrops to test it. However, the results that he got were real. Like he didn't misrepresent those. He went, "Hey, we got this many letters," and they had 5 or 6. I think it averaged out to like 5.3 average addresses or whatever that they went through.
Yeah, so when I was talking about 6 degrees, I was more thinking about 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, well, so that's where that came from. Eventually, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if whoever came up with. I think it was a movie or whatever that talked about 6 degrees Kevin Bacon. Or
It's
whatever.
actually a Google search you can do. So you can go 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon and like a popular figure, and it'll try to spit that out for you.
Yeah. So whether or not the person that created that knew that they were referring to that, that is where the original thought process came from.
Oh yeah. So I just searched 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, and now there's a website, but I think Google used to have this algorithm. Could be totally wrong though. But search 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Emma Watson has a Bacon number of 2. She was in The Circle with Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks was in Apollo 13, and that's where you get Kevin Bacon.
Oh, was he in there?
He was in Apollo 13.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So I remember Kevin Bacon. I mean, from a lot of movies, but I always focus on some of his more sinister roles.
And I think he does play a good villain.
I can only see him in those sinister lights, so I don't like. I'm sure he's a fine person. I don't know anything about him personally.
He brought an entire town to dance. Like, how can you not love that individual?
Yeah, but like, I really don't want to get into some of the other movies on this podcast because we're trying to make it family friendly.
Yeah, which comes back to our purpose. What's the purpose of this podcast? It's not talked about Kevin Bacon, so we're on crap.
Yeah, we're on the P, right? We covered so we covered currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and now we're on P, which is purpose. Okay. So what's the purpose of the information or the source that you're looking at? So if it's a journalist, you hope their purpose is to report the fact. And I mean, part of their job is to have a narrative because that's how humans tend to consume information. You want to look at whether or not that narrative is biased, which we'll get into.
Which journalists, they'll always have their own analysis of events that are happening. Because one of the things that I would have liked to experience is not having a 24-hour news cycle.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean like
I lived in that and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, so I've always grown up to where I have a news channel available, right, that I can access.
Yeah,
and I can get news anytime I want to.
You got to turn it off, man. You can't just.
Yeah, I mean, I rarely ever watch television anymore because again, like the youngsters in the EU, I get a lot of my information from social media as well. That's been curated for me that I ultimately try to fact check. But yeah, as far as purpose goes, you would hope that journalists will want to do that, but there are some biased news sources.
But you want if it's journalism, you want their goal to be informative. If it's a scientific study, you want their purpose to be, hey, this is the study we did, this is how we conducted it, and here's the results. And then they always add for future experimentation, right? Because they want you to repeat it to see if their results were accurate. They want you to take that next step because, hey, we've already done all this work, so now you can take what we have if you can repeat it and step further.
And I always like to think when we keep saying do your own research, those scientific studies are typically one or teams of people working together over a sometimes lengthy amount of time, gathering all their sources to report it, right?
Yeah.
That's doing research. However, now when I hear people say, do your own research, don't be a sheep, it's literally you sitting on a toilet looking at your phone trying to do research.
Not always on a toilet. Uh, sometimes in the shower. I got one of those waterproof phone covers.
Ooh, nice.
Um,
Fancy.
what do you think the purpose of political or politician press conferences are?
Oh, um, so anything that comes from a politician, they ultimately have a leaning one way or the other. So I think they have like three differing points of view that they're trying to get across. The first one is they have their own agenda that they want to promote, right? There's a reason why they got into politics. And then also, a politician should be a public servant, right? They should want to make sure that their constituents' views are voiced. They should
Yeah.
want to do that.
Or represented?
Exactly. And then there's always this third view, especially in the United States. They probably got there into that position because someone advocated for them to be there other than themselves or constituents. So there's always the lobbyist
Oh,
point of
yeah.
view as
So
well.
they're advocating, hopefully, on behalf of the constituents first. However, there is a lobbyist or a fundraising element to it.
Yeah, and again, that's I think it's more than just a United States phenomenon for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I do know whenever I hear someone say something, while I do get that they probably respect me and want to serve my values and what I believe on some certain levels, but ultimately money speaks volumes more than a person's character ever can.
Yeah, yeah. I would also argue that the purpose of a politician at a press conference is to also, in some capacity, demonstrate the incompetence of an opponent. Not always, but in definitely a more polarized political system.
If they're
With,
currently in a race, I could see that, right? Where they know they're coming up
yeah,
for re-election very soon. So that's going to be on the forefront of people's minds, of course, during a debate.
yeah, yeah. Also, I think if they're trying to generate support for more of whatever their political party is to get elected. So if you had staggered elections like we do in the US, there's always an election coming up. Like you're never more than 2 years away from an election. Uh, so they may be pushing to get other people in from their party.
Now let's take a more lighthearted approach. So talking about purpose still, let's talk about satire for a minute, right?
Oh yeah.
That
Oh man, it's my favorite
if you
thing on
can
the
read in
internet.
between the lines on some of these stories, and also I learned things from reading satire that I wouldn't have known about unless I went to them, right? So, um,
It's like I fact check satire and I know it's false, but sometimes they bring up or they highlight things that I wasn't expecting. And then I'll just go down these rabbit holes and be like, oh, this was actually based in something real. And now I know about Blue Jays, which I didn't know before.
so satire and one of my favorite satirical news sources to get a lot of things from. There's two of them, right? One's a variety talk show, John Oliver,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
he presents facts, even
He,
though they could be biased towards one side.
he does present, like, the researchers on that show do a really good job when he actually presents facts.
Mhm. And then the other one is, of course, everybody's favorite news source, The Onion.
Oh, it's, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, like, one of my favorite Onion time wasters is the infographics that they do for athletes, where they just go, "This guy has a bionic elbow, but it's like he's a swimmer or something," or his left toe is longer than his right toes. Like just stuff like it's just so stupid, but I absolutely love it.
I love their videos they produce as well. One of my
World of Warcraft craft.
one of my favorite ones was they were talking about Facebook as the primary tool
Yeah.
for CIA spying. And
Well, they said that the CIA created,
yeah,
like Zuckerberg was a spy,
yeah,
and he created Facebook.
yeah, got the Distinguished Intelligence Professional Award for that. So yeah, again, a satire if you know how to view it, and also it can get into mainstream news as well. For example, I know that there were certain political figures who reshared stories from the Babylon Bee.
Yeah, more than once.
Yeah, so
More
like,
than once.
so whenever that figure is an authoritative figure, right? and then shares a news story. Well, news is very loose there.
Yeah.
Shares content, shares content from the Babylon Bee that influences millions of
Yeah.
followers.
So generally, your primary satirical websites will say on there somewhere, "We produce satire."
They should hopefully make that disclaimer for all our military folks out there. Within the first year of you being in the military, you will undoubtedly hear about the duffel blog.
Yeah.
It,
Oh, yeah.
it
That's,
comes up in your feed as well, which goes onto that where you're influencing someone, and in your own understanding of it, like because we're through with crap, now we're on BS, right? So bias.
yeah, bias. So generally, wherever you're going, whatever information you look for, there's going to be a slant or a bias to it, and that's something that you want to consider. But for this section of our mnemonic device, the bias is yours. So what are you like? Are you just confirming what you already think about whatever you're researching? Um,
Confirmation bias.
Yep. I mean, there's 1,000 of these things.
All right. So list of cognitive biases, right? Which is how you think about something, right?
Yeah,
And then
and-
as a result of your experiences, education, and your knowledge you've gained over time, how all that can come together to influence how you perceive something, and then ultimately how you can talk about it to someone else.
For any researcher or OSINT practitioner or just anybody out there, when you're looking at stuff, it's important to understand what your biases are, because that'll help you accept new information that is counter to what you already believe.
And for that specifically, there are tools out there for you to hopefully eliminate bias if you're trying to report facts.
Or minimize it.
Exactly. Because ultimately, depending on the audience that you're trying to reach to, right, there is some bias that you would want to include in that report because they want to hear it, right? So if you're talking to a bunch of farmers and you want to talk about how crop levels are doing, the cost of machinery, like what grants the government's giving out, politicians to support, of course, the information you're going to research is going to be heavily geared towards finding all of that and not so much reporting in the other one. So bias in your research is another huge thing you look at as well, because if all of your sources go towards confirming the information that you're looking for, that's something you probably shouldn't be doing every single time.
You should definitely examine it.
Yeah. Because in the Socratic method, right, which we're talking about before with researchers, you're never trying to prove the hypothesis. You're trying to prove the null hypothesis.
Yeah, you're trying to disprove whatever you're looking for.
Yeah. So you're always trying to find the information which disproves it, which is something you should try to do yourself. So if you hear something, right, again, I don't believe that everything should be doubted, right, but I think everything should be verified.
You should. I'll say you should be suspicious about everything you hear.
Yeah. Exactly. I always verify everything because my wife tells me something about her own personal experience during the day. Like she saw someone flip her off on the road. There's no way I can sit here and verify that, right? But at that point,
that you have, well, if your wife does it, you're supportive,
yeah,
and you're on her side. Then to heck with that other guy.
Exactly. But yeah, bias. So, and also, even though we're talking about more towards your own understanding of the content that you're looking at, bringing in, also look at the bias of the other person as well.
Yeah, of the source. Yeah, absolutely.
And then also going to that, site and source, right? So one of the things we've been saying so far is like website, videos, social media, but there are also other sources you need to be aware of as well. Newspaper, still really huge.
Yeah,
right? Radios,
library.
Even though people, I don't think, listen to the radio a whole lot anymore, right?
I listen to the radio at least 3 times a week, just to say that I listen to the radio at least 3 times a week. I have a little handheld battery one, man, battery powered, that I'll pull out and I'll yank out the antenna and I'll just cruise through the little tuner, man.
So my son, for Christmas, he was so excited. We went to an outlet store and they had it was a portable Bluetooth radio, and it was also solar powered, and it could be hand cranked as well.
Yeah, I love those things, man.
Super excited. So when we brought it home, he pulls out the antenna and he goes, "What is this?" And I go, "Well, that's for the radio." He's like, "I know it's a radio, but what's this for?" I said, "It's for FM AM radio." And he goes, "Oh, you mean like the thing in the car?"
You don't even have an antenna like that on the car anymore.
No.
You gotta
And
put the tennis ball on it.
yeah, and I was like, "Yes, man." It's like in the car, but it's mobile. And he just looks at me, big, huge, bright smile, and goes, "That is so cool."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Never mind. He has, probably 3 music listening apps on its phone, which is more portable.
Yeah. And radio on the internet is a thing as well. I think every radio station now has transferred over to digital from analog. So that means they can broadcast simultaneously across multiple mediums. But anyways, going back to site or source, which is why I brought that up. When you're talking about your source, where are you getting the information from?
Yeah. So if I'm on a news article, my source in that is both it's the journalist, and then the site is the overall news site. So I want to look at both of those things. Um, and then you'll run that through some of the other widgets like authority, but you'll or if you're reading a news article that's about a study, you want to know like that study is the source, um, and then the person reporting on it is an additional source.
So whenever you're looking at contents, right?
Yes.
Remember to look at the crap and the BS
Yes.
on it.
Yeah. Currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, purpose, bias, site, source.
Yeah,
Crap
always remember that.
BS.
So, what if, right, you don't have the research background, the methodology, critical thinking resources at your disposal in order to verify or fact check everything that you see on the internet, right? Or anything that comes across? Are there resources out there that we can use to
I
try to
mean, yeah. So there's a ton of fact checking websites, and I mean there's stuff out there every day. There's also if we're talking about news, there's a bunch of sites that talk about the bias of those sites. Was it PolitiFact is one where they fact check politicians. Disinfo, or was it Europe Disinfo Lab, or
disinfo.eu?
yeah, disinfo.eu, which is the Euro Disinfo Lab, and they do a pretty decent job at going, hey, here's all the disinfo we found. They do a newsletter, and I'm not sure of the periodicity of that newsletter, but they talk about the disinfo in Europe. They also cover stuff in the States and South America as well. Some of the other sites are
Factcheck.org.
oh, there you go. Yeah, factcheck.org. Snopes is one.
Oh man, yeah, I love Snopes. Like Snopes is one of those. So Snopes got started up. It isn't run by a government organization. It has been found by multiple researchers, journalists, organizations to conduct its research and apply methodology to where it comes to the right conclusion more than once to verify information. But it was just a hobby that was started by a couple of people.
When I discovered Snopes, I felt it was life changing because I didn't know that fact checking websites existed, and I discovered it way too late in my adult life to because I was just out there just believing everything I read, and because I thought that every news article I read was an authoritative source.
Which it can present itself that way. I mean, like when you go to theonion.com, I mean, when you're reading it, because it says that what is the best place for news on the internet since whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It doesn't say immediately on there that it's satire. You look at it and like, wow, this is a really engaging news source. But one of the reasons why I like Snopes is that it looks at really popular events, not just politics, not just news. It looks at really popular events. For example, say there's a story about a water skiing squirrel and everybody's starting to doubt it. You can submit that to Snopes and be like, hey, was this truly a water skiing squirrel that was here, or was this AI generated?
And Snopes presents its methodology. They go, hey, this is how we go about finding information, or finding the accuracy of the information that's out there.
Yeah. And they go back for years, right? I'm actually looking on their website right now, and they have a story about Tabitha Babbitt inventing the first practical circular sawmill is probably not true. And this story comes from 1777. So,
Oh, I didn't even know that.
yeah, yeah. So they go way back in time for this stuff, and they do go in depth about their methodology and practices.
And so one of the things you always want to do, whatever site you're on, is look at the About Us section. because most sites have that.
Mhm.
Think tanks have it, NGOs have it, news organizations have it, satirical sites tend to have it, and that'll tell you or give you an inclination as to how those sites and those sources gather their information.
And when it comes to that as well, just know that anybody can include an about us section
Yeah,
on a website.
and you can make it up too.
Totally. So one of the things you can do is verify the authenticity of the website itself. So what you can do is you can go look up the DNS records
You can go to
for
who
the
is.
website and look at those who is
Yeah.
databases and see when it was first created, who the current owner is, right? Email addresses.
How
You
often they renew it, how many times it's changed
yeah.
hands.
There's
or,
there, and
or
there are
registrar.
and there are websites that just track the history of that, and then also where are people visiting it from, so you can apply an SEO research methodology, or SEO stands for search engine optimization. There are websites out there that are just designed to organizations to help increase traffic to a website, so you can use their websites to see who's normally visiting it. Are they from the United States? What the demographics are? How do they get to the website? What keywords they use? And we can have a whole episode on website validation, verification, understanding history. But
we're
that is
absolutely going to have an episode on that.
that's how to determine whether or not the site may be a fake website, potentially spreading misinformation, disinformation, or a real website. And one of the things I do want to talk about before we get off here is how fast this information gets spread. Right.
So truth is a lot harder. It's harder to spread, and it's harder to undo false information that's out there.
And if I can find let's see if I can find the study real quick, while Chris talks about how fast it can spread when it's fake, right? Because if you have like a sensational news story, that spreads so much faster than.
I mean, I heard, according to the book, Hillbilly Elegy, that someone had relations with the sofa, right? Like, I mean, how fast did that go everywhere? And what made it, I think what gave it legitimacy or authority was the fact that whoever originally, I think it was a tweet, whoever originally tweeted that put in page numbers. They went, hey, on page 149, and I'm making that number up. But they went, hey, on page whatever of Hillbilly Elegy, this dude talked about some of the relations he had with a couch, right? And that went everywhere. And for a while there, in circles, no one knew that it was satire, even though in the original tweet, they went, hey, this isn't real, right? But because it had page numbers, it had authority that gave it legitimacy, and it got spread oot and a boot.
Yeah, I'm just looking at an article right now talking about how lies can spread faster than truth. There was a study conducted in March 2018, and it's on science.org. If you want the DOI number, reach out and I'll give it to you so you can check it out. But on here, they did a study from data from Twitter from 2006 to 2017, and they found that lies consistently false news reached far more people than the truth did.
Well, I mean, I think there's a sensationalism element to that, right? This is scandalous, or this causes me to feel one way or the other, whether it makes me angry or happy. Like, that spreads faster than percentages.
Yeah, and when it goes to, again, cherry picking what information goes into a news story, you could pick an image of something which goes to try to validate what you're trying to say or the news story itself, but that image could probably not be for that one specific news story. It could be from years before or be completely AI generated.
Yeah, and I mean, that's speaking of news articles, because that's where people after 30 start to get their information, right? That's why they're written in the reverse funnel technique. So they take the most, and you'll call them findings, but they'll take the most sensationalized information and they'll put that in the top paragraph or make it a headline. And then the first paragraph essentially just repeats the headline, where if you want the actual details of how they got to that headline or how they got to that sensational piece, that's usually at the bottom of the article or in the middle, but it's never at the front. So you actually have to read the article to get real information. But if you can take that headline and remember it, you can then spread that whether or not you read the article.
And most of the times, at least from my perspective on it, that headline may or may not be written by the journalist or writer.
Yeah, it could
That's
be.
that's probably
an-
the editor
An editor,
going in there.
yeah, trying to grab attention.
And one thing I will say about that is that happened in Marvel's Spider-Man 2 that I recently just finished. I won't ruin the whole story, but Peter Parker, Spider-Man, acquires some abilities which causes him to be somewhat of a menace than he previously was. And now we have acts to back it up. And MJ gets published in the Daily Bugle, and it really upsets Peter, right? But the main article, the main headline, it was sensational where Spider-Man terrorizes the city, when in reality, Spider-Man's not really known for that.
Yeah, I mean that's common.
That's Jay Jonah.
Throughout the series, video games or not. Do we have time to actually do some application of crap BS to? Well, let's just do it on our news source if we have time for it.
Which news source?
Let's do the one that we started the show with. The youth are only getting their information from social media. All right, so the first one, C for crap BS, is currency. When did this article come out?
So this is where Chris's research came in too, because he wanted to understand more about this whole youth report and when it was published and how often it is. But this specific one that we're talking about this week came out in February 2025. This article did.
I mean, so that's current, right? This is not brand new information, but we're only in April, so it's not old.
Yeah.
I mean, in the modern news cycle, it's history,
Yeah.
right? But it's relatively current information. So relevancy. So if my topic
For this podcast,
yeah,
extremely relevant.
yeah, it gives us something to talk about. If my question is and I mean I question this all the time, how are the people younger than me receiving information? How are they consuming information, and what are their sources? Because I have kids, and Tim has kids, and they're consuming their own information at this point because they're no longer just reliant on me as their authoritative source. So how they receive information and what they think, and if they can think critically about that information, is very important to me. So in that sense, the article is relevant to my topic of concern.
And then next thing is, right, accuracy.
Authority is
Authority.
Yeah, I mean they're interchangeable, the two A's, but
there's two A's. There's
yeah,
too many A's in this acronym to remember the order.
they're not. It's authority.
All right, so we're going to accuracy next, right?
Authority, and then accuracy.
See, again, there's too many A's to remember.
There's two.
Okay.
Do you just want to do accuracy and then do authority?
All right, let's go ahead and do authority, and then we'll do accuracy.
Right. So authority, and so this one article presents a few different possibilities for authoritative sources. The journalist,
and then also we want to look at the Euro News itself as well.
Yep. Euro News. Are they an authoritative source to present news? I mean, they have news in the title. Is that what they generally present, or are they an entertainment industry that also has a news section?
Definitely looking about them again, finding the About Euro News section. According to their website, they are the #1 international news channel in the EU.
So channel implies television.
Yeah, so that means that they've actually, and I'm looking at how long they've been around, again, the history of it as well.
Yeah.
Been around since 1993, reporting stories.
So but because they say they're the #1 news channel,
that's a marketing tagline.
Yeah, they're multilingual, but that also could mean that they're, I know this isn't print, but their online news is secondary to their television news set. So they may not put in the effort and background into their news articles. And in fact, I read some reviews about Euronews to check their authority, and that was one of the biggest things. They're like, hey, so the programming that they put on is great. It comes out in all these different languages, but their news articles, their online articles, tend to lack the substance that their TV show puts forth.
And one of the things we can check as well are these fact checking websites, right? So one of the ones I went to that Chris and I were checking out before the episode is mediabiasfactcheck.com. And they actually have an entry for Euronews where they're looking at the bias and the credibility. And it looks like they report mostly factual information. You can see the graphics on here, and they're a little bit left center.
Okay, so from a bias, so more liberal, progressive, vice conservative.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then, so we did, the other authority sources. So we did the news site, the author of the article, and then the author, she quotes two different studies in the article. She quotes the European Youth Survey and the Reuters Institute for Digital News report.
And, looking at this,
So
reading
those
it
are
again,
additional sources that we have to explore the authority of. So one of the things that I look for in a news article when they're quoting a study or an outside source, which I mean journalists often do, is do they link to that source of information? If it's, if they're talking about what a politician says, are they linking to a transcript or a video, something more concrete? So did they provide links to these studies in this news article?
they did.
They did.
They linked to. They talked about Eurobarometer.
Yep.
And one of them, which is the survey that goes out, and it's a consistent survey that goes out.
Yep.
That goes into the youth survey, which they also link to as well.
Right. So they provide their information. So if they're directing you, or if they're giving you enough information to find their source, which is something that you also want to look for, because not everyone will present that link or the source citations of, hey, this is where we got the information for an article. But if they give you enough detailed information that you can go out and find their source, do that. But it's also lends credibility to their authority to report that.
Right, we've done
Yeah. We did currency, relevancy, and authority. So accuracy. How do we know that the information we'll start with the journalist is reporting is accurate? Did they represent the studies correctly?
Well, I think for this one, it was a very quick story. So I think if there was an actual TV segment for this, they would have gone much more in depth and talked about it longer. Maybe a panelist who came on there and mentioned it. But for this one, I think just based on this, it's too short to really understand, and then we have to go and check those sources. But we also need to look at this person's.
Yeah. So the journalist. So I did a couple things here when looking at this story. One, I went and read the reports that she cited, and she did accurately represent the percentages that she talked about how the youth is consuming information. She accurately represented the Reuters Institute for Digital News report about how the youth are consuming information. And then I went to this journalist LinkedIn profile and looked at what they've reported on in the past, what their job titles are, what their degree is in. And so she has a master's in journalism. She has a bachelor's in, I think, political science or something to the equivalent of that, whatever the European equivalent of that is. And her current job at Euronews is she's a social media and political journalist, which if you look at the article, she's reporting on how kids are consuming political news from social media, which is right in her bailiwick.
So purpose.
All right. So what's the purpose of this? Is it to inform us? Is it cautionary? What is it asking us to do?
Yeah, this one definitely from the perspective of this website, its intent is to inform, right? And you mentioned cautionary, which of course is saying like, hey, our younger generation are getting more news out here. And I think to a certain extent, it's also educational, right? Trying to tell people like, hey, there are individuals out there, right? The younger generation that are getting most of their information from here. Maybe you should talk to them about that. It tries to provoke thought on the article as well.
And I think it does a good job at trying to promote conversation. Like if you have kids and you read this, you go, oh no, my children are only getting their news from Instagram. That is a terrible idea, right? And that goes into one of my biases, right? Because I think that, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot of great uses of social media, and I think there's a lot of great information out there. But I don't like social media. I think its addictive nature has a capability, and I'm going to use an old person term here. It's going to rot their brains, and I feel that it rots my brains. And I also think that the snippets and the shortness of, if you're looking at TikTok or Reels, or Instagram videos, I mean, these are short, they're short consumable bits. Even Imager, which is one of my favorite social media platforms, they're minute-long videos, right? That's the cap. I think Blue Sky just got up to like 3 minutes, but it's short, consumable information, and it doesn't offer an ability to engage with that information to the point that you can question it and think about it critically. So I think one of the purposes of this is to encourage people to talk to younger people or the youth about the information that they're consuming.
All right. What went into your bias when finding this article for this podcast?
Exactly that. Like, I think social media presents a lot of garbage information. I think it definitely has a purpose.
How did you discover this article, by the way? Did it come up naturally, like during your research, or was it something you
Yeah,
went
I was looking
for?
up misinfo and disinfo, and this article popped up, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect," because it's about how people consume media, which is what we're kind of talking about here, and why we want to use crap BS as a scale to understand how we consume media, and that way we can engage with the information that we're collecting or understanding from either an OSINT standpoint or just a general consumer, how we can engage with it in a way to make sure that the information we're getting is as reliable as possible.
And then finally, cite and source. I think we've already hit this on the head a little bit, talking about accuracy and authority already. But the source that this specifically came from was Euronews. And as we've already mentioned, a website that does have a history of reporting and that Chris has already found to be reliable, especially from TV medium.
Yeah, this website has been out for 28 years. It's been renewed every year, actually in April. So it's due to be renewed either shortly or is renewed just before we started recording this.
Yeah.
That's from their Who Is lookup. Man, I went through all of it.
Love it.
One of the things I do want to add is from the accuracy standpoint. So it talked about the most recent Euro Youth Barometer study, or Eurobarometer, I think is what they call it, youth survey. I looked at the methodology for that survey. They interviewed 26,000 people between 16 and 30, which is, if you look at statistical analysis, which I even dove into some of the math of what an accurate representative sample is. So it fits within the norms of that realm. Although if you look at, different statisticians will give you different information about what an accurate representative sample is. The youth barometer or the Eurobarometer study fits within that. I looked at the Reuters Institute for Digital News to make sure it was being accurately reported. And then I looked at the previous installments of these reports to see if there's a trend. And then I even looked at some other sources, like I went to US Media Map to see if other surveys about how youth are receiving information lend credence to the Eurobarometer youth survey. And they do most, and like if you look at the Media Map or Media, I think it's Media Morph study for the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, you can actually see the percentage of youth that only get their information from social media incrementally increase every year. And you see the same thing with the Eurobarometer youth survey too. Like you'll see the numbers from this year versus the numbers from the previous years, and all of that stuff is increasing. So it feels accurate based on additional information.
So the adage that I've said more than once is never trust, always verify. Kind of goes into all of this as well.
Yeah. So if we look at crap BS as a whole, we can accurately say, I think, that being informed is easy. Being accurately informed is exhausting.
Yeah.
So you have to, I mean, and one of the things that you have to learn as a consumer of information and as an OSINT practitioner is when and where to go that deep with the information you're looking at. If you're using that as a source for a report, then you have to go into it. If you're just using it as a pivot point to find other information, then you don't have to go that far into it.
One of my favorite quotes by Denzel Washington is, "If you watch the news, you're misinformed. If you don't watch the news, you're uninformed." Right? So again, it's great seeing how all this stuff comes together. With that, thanks guys for listening. You know, Chris' exhaustive research went into this episode, and we have a few more coming up about some techniques we're going to talk about.
I love this stuff, man.
Next thing we're going to talk about a little bit is propaganda, a little bit more about misinformation, disinformation, potentially at the nation state level.
Oh yeah,
understanding that, and then also probably some more practical examples in our everyday lives. Right, understanding misinformation, disinformation exists. So again, please subscribe, comment if you want to, reach out to us if you have any topics you want to suggest, if you'd like to be on a future episode, because we are going to start doing interviews with people, and then also check out our links to our socials in our description. And this was the Ocean Output, hosted by Chris and Tim.
Tim and Chris.